Okay, so first of all, Happy New Year. I think I can still say that because it's still January. And thank you so much for joining us. So this year, instead of, or in addition to, reducing our junk food intake, reducing the amount of money we spent as a New Year's resolution, or reducing our time being sedentary, we are all vowing to try to reduce our waste. So we started doing this event in the new year as a New Year's resolution. We will do this through our home waste audit, which is designed to increase your waste literacy to help you reduce the waste that you produce at home. And so let's get started. So welcome to our fourth, maybe, annual home waste audit. It is a collaborative science project hosted by us, the U of T trash team, and fueled by our community, which is all of you. Today, we're going to take you through a short presentation that covers who we are, some background on waste with a focus on plastic waste, as well as instructions for our home waste audit. Before we get going, I just want to get to know each other a bit, and then we'll also acknowledge the land where we do our work. So today you have two hosts. My name is Chelsea Rockman. I'm one of the co-founders of the U of T trash team and also a researcher of microplastics. I've been working on the issue of plastic pollution for 15 years. And your second host is Hannah. Hannah, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah DeFrand. I am U of T trash team staff, and I also work to coordinate our international trash truck network, which we run with Ocean Conservancy as a collaborative program. And the international trash truck network has goals to increase global cleanup efforts, as we do with the trash team, but this time we use trash capture technologies. The aim of the network is to document our impact, collect data, and encourage trash tracking projects that engage the community and inform upstream solutions. And my New Year's resolution is to read more books.
Yes, right. My New Year's resolution is to improve my Spanish, in addition to reducing my waste. And each of you are now our fellow scientists. So to help us better understand the diversity of our data and the diversity of people in the room, we wanted to ask you to type where you are from in the chat box. And so that should include the city. There's a reason for this, and we'll tell you why. So the city where you are writing from, and you are more than welcome to add the province or the state and the country as well. So go ahead and type where you're from in the chat. And while you're doing that, I'll let you know that Hannah has a new skill, and that is that sometimes her video screen goes crazy and she looks like an Andy Warhol art installation. So if that happens, you'll still hear her and you'll see her screen. And she'll probably turn her camera off and turn it right back on. Okay, so far we have people from Toronto, people from Mississauga, which I think in terms of waste is the region of Peel, but they can confirm. North Etobicoke, which I think might fall under Toronto for waste management, but you will find out. Hamilton, the city of Vaughan, Toronto. Awesome. So we do have some diversity here in terms of your waste management stream, which is great. Okay. So finally, before we start, we want to acknowledge the history of the lands that we call home. So we're thrilled to have people joining us from all over, and we want to extend our acknowledgements to the Indigenous and traditional path across all territories. For our team, we'll speak to the land on which the University of Toronto operates. So for thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. So today, meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're really grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land and to work on the issues that we work on this land. We also want to tell you a little bit about ourselves, who is the U of T trash team. So our team is made up of volunteers, students, and early career researchers working toward a shared goal to increase waste literacy in our community while reducing plastic pollution in our ecosystems. We formed in 2017 in collaboration with my lab, being arm of a research lab and a university. This means we have a foundation in science, data, which is really important to us, and that helps provide and communicate the facts that can inform the solutions that we work on. Our mission and vision are all built around increasing waste literacy while connecting with people, having fun, and taking action. We aim to take a really positive approach to our work, and we're rooted in science and evidence-based solutions, as I said earlier. Specifically, we use education, public outreach, and scientific research to deliver evidence-based solutions to decrease solid waste and promote a more circular economy. And all of that is part of our home waste audit. Our three main work streams are community outreach, education, and solutions-based research. And to sum all of this work up, we have created a theory of change, which was a piece of art made by Madeline Milne, who's one of our early members of the U of T trash team. And here you can see how scientific evidence provides the foundation for our work. And through our three connected work streams, we work locally and build collaborations globally to reduce plastic pollution. We could not do this without the energy of our volunteers who make it possible to achieve our goals related to policy, healthy ecosystems, and engaged communities. And this year we added art to our portfolio, and it is through art that we tell our story in this picture. If you have any questions about the U of T trash team, please don't hesitate to ask during the Q&A period. And you can also always visit our website to learn more. Okay, so let's dive into the reason why you all logged in this evening, and that is the Home Waste Audit, our New Year's edition. So this project is designed to help each of us change our own personal habits to protect the planet we live on. And this project has two personal objectives, and those are to learn about the waste stream in the municipality where you live, meaning learn what bins you have, the recycling, the landfill, the organics, and what goes in each of them. And two is to decrease your own waste footprint and divert waste away from your landfill bin by procuring and using products that you can reuse or that go into other bins like the recycle bin. The data that you will collect will help you track your own progress. Our collective data that you share will enable us to see how diverse waste streams are across geographies and how waste literacy and change behaviors can reduce waste. This data will be anonymized and synthesized and shared in our second webinar. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask during the Q&A, or you can always send emails directly to us. If you have questions throughout this webinar, you are more than welcome to type them in the chat at any time, and we will save them to ask at the end, or somebody may answer it directly in the chat as we go. Otherwise, you can wait until the end for the Q&A period and raise your hand, and we will call on you. So in just a minute, I will carefully go through the instructions of the Home Waste Audit, which is focused on local solutions to a quickly growing issue. But first, we want to turn it over to Hannah to put this project in the context of the global issue. So Hannah, over to you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Okay, so before we begin, I want to take a moment to pause, and I would like everyone on the call to take a look around you in the room that you're sitting in. And just take note of how many items in that room are made of plastic. So are you watching it on a laptop that's made from plastic? Are you taking notes, holding something made of plastic? Are you sitting on something plastic? Is it made from plastic or synthetic fabric? And if there's anyone who can't see any plastic in the room right now, I'll be extremely shocked because plastic is everywhere. It's a part of our daily lives, and it's something that we use all the time. And there's good reason for that. So there are obvious reasons why plastics have become something we use every day. Plastic is cheap, it's fast to produce compared to other natural materials. It's also lightweight in comparison to glass or other containers, and so it can save energy when shipping because a heavier truck requires more gas. Plastics are also durable and can be manufactured to be extremely rigid, flexible, or heat resistant. And so because of its many different forms, plastic is a unique material with some very valuable functions, including use in medicine, use in safety and protection, communication. So I'm attending this webinar on a plastic laptop, so that's a good example. And then also transport. However, plastic has now infiltrated every single part of our lives. So most people can't go a day or even a couple of hours as you're getting ready for work in the morning without touching something made of plastic. And so while there are valuable uses for it, there are also many items that we use every day that are not necessary. And in particular, I'm referring to single-use items here and unnecessary packaging, like the items shown in these images. These items are often made from non-recyclable plastics and end up going into our landfills or into the environment. So whilst looking at these images, take a moment to think about if you've used any of these items over the last few days, or if you've seen them in supermarkets, for example, the bananas, and think about any possible alternatives you could choose instead. And then we have a very sad transition to these plastics ending up in the environment. So examples of all the same items, but where we don't want them, which is in our oceans and on beaches and in our environment. Okay, so a little bit of a look back onto, yeah, exactly. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a good example of that. So going back a little bit in time, so since the 1950s, plastic production has increased exponentially, and this is due to both high demand and high consumption. So by the year 2017, we produced approximately 8,300 million metric tons of virgin plastics. And you can see, if you follow this image, that production is getting faster and faster by the year, and half of all plastics ever manufactured have been made in the last 15 or so years. And if these trends continue, by 2050, we'll have produced 26 billion metric tons of plastic waste. So you can see that black line that we're on, that trajectory that we're on, is just going up and up. So our plastic consumption habit, fueled by endless supply of disposable products, has outpaced our waste management systems. And this has resulted in a large amount of plastic waste escaping our waste systems and reaching the environment. And you might have previously heard the estimate that 8 million tons of plastic waste enters our oceans every year. Well, we now know this number is likely a lot higher when we consider waste from inland sources, increases in production, and also plastic that ends up not just in our oceans, but on land, in rivers, and in our lakes. And we published a study a couple of years ago that estimated that in 2016, up to 23 million metric tons of plastic waste entered our aquatic environments. And what's more is, even with all current efforts to reduce plastic pollution at the moment, if we keep producing and using plastic at current rates, this number could reach 53 million tons per year by 2030. The problem with all this plastic in the environment is that plastic does not decompose, it degrades. So every piece of plastic that's ever been made still exists in some form, likely in smaller fragments and microplastics. So because it doesn't go away, it persists and accumulates in the environment, and we now are finding it everywhere. And as well as being just an eyesore, it threatens the health and survival of wildlife due to hazards related to entanglement, ingestion, and also chemicals associated with plastics, both additive chemicals that are used in their production and pollutants that they absorb from the environment. Okay, now time for a quick poll question. So we'll see if this works. Okay, so the question is, what percentage of all plastic ever made globally do you think has been recycled? And you have 4 options there: 1%, 9%, 27%, or 49%. So I'll give you all a moment to vote. Interesting responses. Okay, I think that everyone seems to have had a go now. So we can share the results if you can see those. Oh.
Can you see the results? I just shared.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so you can see that everyone was pretty pessimistic with their answers to the poll. So let's see if you were correct. So sadly, those of you who were pessimistic in your answer for that question, unfortunately you were correct. So of all plastic waste that's ever been produced, 79% has ended up either in landfills or in the environment, 12% has been incinerated, so burnt, and only 9% has been recycled. So some of you guessed 1%, so I guess it's a little bit better than what some of you expected. But much of the waste that ends up in landfills is avoidable, as approximately 40% of plastic produced every year is single-use packaging, used just once and then discarded. So we can see either way, single-use plastics are an issue. And so while it's true that recycling alone will not solve our plastic pollution problem, it definitely helps when used in the right way. So plastic can't be recycled infinitely, but every item that is recycled reduces the amount of energy required to make new items. Plastic is made from oil, which is a fossil fuel. So by reducing oil demands for plastic production, recycling also reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And importantly, recycling contributes to the diversion of waste from landfill. Sending waste to landfill should be our final option after first refusing, reducing, reusing, and then recycling. So by using something once and throwing it away, this encourages continued consumption of fossil fuels and the creation of new products. And we know that landfill space is finite, and we don't have an infinite amount of space. So we must prioritize alternative ways to deal with our waste. The waste in landfills can also contaminate groundwaters, and it can contribute to air pollution as the waste decomposes, so it has other environmental impacts too. And also, not all landfills are perfectly engineered and well contained. And so landfill might not be the final endpoint for our plastic waste. If it leaks out of landfills, it will pollute surrounding environments. So what can we do about this? So on an individual level, there are three main ways we can tackle the problem of plastic pollution in the environment. And the first is to reduce our consumption. So that's by using less plastics and not contributing to the need for increased production. Second is improving waste management, for example, at home and in our local areas. Third is cleaning up pollution from the environment itself. And so cleanup events over the last few years have been less so, but they're ramping up again now, which is great to hear. But we also know that people are spending more and more time at home. So in this home waste audit, we're going to focus on how to reduce plastic consumption and improve our waste management at home. And also, we strongly believe in the power of the individual. So even small changes you can make on an everyday basis can make a huge difference. For example, in Canada, we produce approximately 3.3 million tonnes of plastic waste every year. 85% of this goes to landfill. And much of this waste is single-use plastic, which can be avoided. So voting with your wallet does work as well, as consumption drives production. If we refuse single-use items, choose not to purchase something with excess packaging, and we make it known that we don't want these products, and collectively we are making a change, we'll eventually see less of it on our shelves. It may be economical for businesses to use plastic over other materials, but it's definitely not economical for them to keep making things that no one is buying and customers are unhappy with. It's also really important to know before you throw. And this is part of what we'll be going through in the home waste audit, learning what items can go in which bin. So we've all had that moment where we're not sure if something should go in the recycling bin or not. And in this situation, many people choose to make an educated guess and throw that item potentially in the recycling bin. This is called wish cycling, when you throw something in the recycling bin in the hope that it will get recycled. But in reality, if it's not a recyclable item, this can contaminate your recycling bin, making it less likely that the stuff that should be recycled will get recycled. And in Canada, upwards of 25% of the waste put in recycling bins is rendered non-recyclable by contamination. So it may be confusing trying to remember where to throw your trash, especially as recycling guidelines differ widely between countries, states, provinces, or even cities and municipalities or districts. And so this is due to the difference in recycling facilities and what they can and can't process in each location. So for example, I'm from the UK originally, you may have already noticed. When I moved to Canada a few years ago, I certainly realized how different recycling guidelines were between the two countries, and I had to relearn what I put in different bins. And that's because some materials recovery facilities are more advanced and are able to process mixed materials. And in Toronto, we're very lucky, there is a lot of items that can be recycled, but in other areas, they can only process certain types of plastic, for example. So it's really important to learn what the guidelines are in your local area. And this leads us into our home waste audit. So I've given you a bit of background there, hopefully got you a bit excited to get going and start thinking about your waste. But I'm going to hand it back over to Chelsea now so she can tell you some information about how it's all going to work.
Hey, thank you, Hannah. All right, so here we go. Tomorrow begins your personal home waste audit. This audit includes 3 overarching tasks. 1 is webinars like today. 2 is the actual audit, which means counting and characterizing your waste. That's the data collection component. Although there's more data collection, there are online surveys to guide increased waste literacy. So hopefully you've already completed survey 1, and by the end of this webinar, you'll only have 1 webinar left. So for this whole project, all you will need is a piece of paper, a pencil, and your computer. And if you don't want to print the data sheets, you can make your own data sheets on a piece of scrap paper, as long as you keep all of the same prompts and type your answers into the data sheet. You will also be receiving all of the links to the surveys, the data sheets, the other resources you need via emails from the Eventbrite. And if anything is ever unclear, we really do encourage you to reach out. We are more than happy to answer your questions. We also promise we will not clutter your inbox, and we will be very careful to only send you what you need to reduce email waste, pun intended. So now I'm going to carefully walk through the instructions 1 week at a time, but if I miss something, please feel free to ask questions at any time. So week 1 starts tomorrow. So we'll start with instructions around that. As I said, hopefully you have taken the entrance survey, and after today, you'll have attended the webinar and you will be good for the next part. And so during week 1, it is really important that you continue business as usual. So we think of this week as your baseline week, for which you will compare your other weeks to. So to properly measure our baselines and how our increased knowledge and changed behaviors reduce our waste, we cannot change our behavior yet. So to prepare for the waste audit, in addition to doing everything you would normally do in terms of waste, I suggest printing or preparing your data sheets and having the instructional guide printed or up on your home screen to follow along for the 4-week period. So when I did this home waste audit, the first time we did it, I decided to log my waste weekly at the end of the week. And so I would actually throw away everything like normal. And at the end of the week, I would dump out my garbage on the porch and I would tally it on a piece of paper. And then I would put that into the data sheet. But you can collect data as you go, so you don't have to dig through your garbage, up to you. And that would be collecting the data as you throw each time. So for me, because I was collecting at the end, this meant that at the end of each week, on Tuesdays in my case, I would collect all of my different waste bins that collect non-recyclable waste that goes to the landfill and combine them into my biggest bin, which for me was the one in my kitchen. Once my largest bin had collected all the landfill waste from the week, you can see now that it is full, I would dump it all onto the ground on a tarp or something in my backyard or on the porch and tally my litter into my homemade data sheet made out of scrap paper that you can see here. The data would then go on the data sheet that you can see here. And so here everything is transcribed. So everything I wrote down is on the electronic data sheet. And this way it's ready to turn in at the end of the 4-week period so it can be synthesized. A couple things to note. It's important to know how many people are taking part in your household. It's also important to know if you have any notes. For example, if it's a week that I go to Costco, I may have extra waste. If it's a week that I throw a birthday party for a child or a friend, it may create extra waste. So it's important that you have that logged because it may be hard to reduce your waste in weeks where you have a special event. The other thing to note is here we have preloaded some extra items for you. So I'm quickly just going to show you what the data sheet looks like. So hopefully you can see this. And so you can see that we have preloaded some items that are common to help you kind of guide you in how we want you to tally your waste. It's also broken down by plastic, paper, metal, glass, mixed materials, which I'll go over what those are in a second, and other. So things for you to exclude on these are dust and hair. We don't need that information. If you rip a box or a piece of paper as you dispose it, count it as 1 item instead of 2. And there's no need to describe brands or specific items of food, for example, for a plastic food wrapper. You can just group it as plastic food wrapper, or if it's aluminum, then it would go as metal. And then let's discuss some of these tricky items that are maybe not be so easy to categorize. And some of these are the mixed items. Mixed materials include things like a cotton swab that sometimes has the plastic stick and the cotton on each side, or for example, a chip bag, which is actually a combination of aluminum and plastic. So we're going to go through a little quiz. And so be ready to type in the chat. And I want to ask you to think about which section of those materials would you put styrofoam? Is it plastic? Is it glass? Is it paper? Is it metal? Is it mixed? Is it other? What is styrofoam? Reese is guessing it is mixed, and Hingis is guessing it is plastic, and plastic is correct. So styrofoam tricks a lot of people. Styrofoam is plastic. Floss, what is floss? Is it plastic? Is it paper? Is it other? Is it mixed? Is it metal? Is it glass? Plastic, yeah, that's right. It often is, unless you're using a non-plastic wax, like I don't know what it would be made of in that case, but that'll say it on the package. All right, compostable plastic cup. What is it? Yeah, it's plastic. But when you do your survey, well, never mind, I'm going to tell you. You're going to have to figure out which bin it goes in. Cigarette butts. Is it paper? Is it plastic? Is it metal? Is it glass? What is a cigarette butt? So Mira, I know you know plastic is in there, but it's mixed because it has paper around it. So we tricked you. A silver chip package, I already mentioned that is mixed, as well as things like a Tetra Pak and a disposable paper cup. Can anyone tell me why a disposable paper cup is a mixed material? It is not just paper. Yeah, it has a plastic inner lining. So sometimes you may get items and you might put them in the wrong category, and that's okay. But we encourage you to look things up and think about it. But if you do put something in the wrong category, we will catch it, and that'll be part of the behavioral change and the learning at the end. Awesome. Okay, great job. Okay, so next I would do the same thing for my recycle bin. So I'm not going to show you the data sheet. It's actually quite similar. And in this case, for me, I only had one recycle bin. So I would just work on my recycle bin at the end of the week. You do not have to do organic. So if you have an organics bin, like a green bin, this doesn't count. It doesn't get included. It's a pretty sustainable waste stream. And so we don't include it. If you don't have a green bin and you tend to put the green bin things in your garbage, and you're going to do what I did, which is go through it at the end of the week, I would put it in a separate bag until you go to take it out. You don't need to log your food waste, but you also don't want to have to sort through it if you're going through your litter at the end of the week. Okay, so now time for another quick poll question. And this time we're not going to put it up as a poll. I just want you to type it in the chat. What do you think your own personal most common waste item is going to be? What would you guess is the thing you throw away the most? Wrappers, yeah, wrappers tends to be a really big one. Paper towels and napkins, that's also a big one. Plastic packaging, pop cans, yeah, for some people. Milk bags. I can tell you last year we had a couple who wore a lot of contacts. And that was a big item, was the disposable contact lenses. Awesome. Okay, I can tell you that plastic wrappers do tend to be one of the more common. So great guesses. Awesome. Okay, well, now you can see if you're right after your baseline, and then also after you start to think about reducing. Okay, so at the end of week 1 and until the end of week 1, we want you to complete survey 2. And the surveys are really important because they help us understand your waste stream, but they also help you increase your waste literacy by learning more about your local waste management, as well as tracking the changes in your own behavior. So in total, there are 4 surveys. You've already done one at the end of week 1, you'll do a second one, and then you'll be halfway there. So week 2 and 3 are no different than week 1, except for now that you can begin, we want you to begin to reduce your waste. So now you have an idea of your waste stream, and we want you to start thinking about ways that you can reduce your waste and try them out. Something to remember that's important is this is not a competition. We will not be judging you on how much or how little waste you produce. We are really interested in the differences we can all make to our own waste production over time. And once we have all the data, we will synthesize it, we will anonymize it, and we will analyze it. And so when we share the results at the end, it's all anonymous. And so it's really fun to be able to go through that data. But again, this is really for your own personal gain. We also recognize that it can be really overwhelming to find information online. It can be a bit like drinking from a fire hose to figure out what is the best way to reduce your waste. And we also know that change is hard, and so baby steps are completely okay. So we have curated a lot of information for you. This was done by Rafaela, who's on the screen, and Cassie, who's moved on to grad school at Waterloo, still working on waste and microplastics. But you can find these tips and tricks on our website. You can also follow us on Twitter, social media, Facebook, where we share some of these tips during the waste audit. If you want to share tips of your own or your own experience, we would really love to see them. And so you can send them our way, or you can share them on your own social and tag us, and we'll see them. And we are at U of T Trash Team on Twitter as well as Instagram. And then in February, you will reach the end, week 4. So here you'll follow the same steps as weeks 2 and 3. However, when you complete week 4, you'll organize your data sheet. So here, however, you have decided to log your data sheets at the end should look the same. And that's the data that you input into the sheet online, and that's the data that you email us. And there's an email here provided on the screen. We also ask that you fill out survey 3 at that time, and that's the closing survey. And that shares what actions you took in your household and provides us with a bit of feedback on how you found the audit. Your final survey, which is the follow-up survey, which is more about long-term behavior change, things that stick, habits, that won't come until early April. Okay, and then at the end of the 4-week period, you get to sit back, relax, and put your feet up. And Raphael and Hannah get to do the opposite, and they get to work on your data. So Hannah goes through all of the social science data that comes from the surveys, and Hannah will be synthesizing your waste data. We'll explore the data, make graphs, look at trends, think about our results, and then we will share it all with you at our second webinar, which will be on Monday, March 6th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, and now it is time for Q&A. So any questions you have for us, there might have been one in the chat earlier, I'm not sure, but please go ahead and either raise your hand or type a question in the chat, and either Hannah or I will answer them, depending on whether you have a question from her portion of the talk or about the details of the home waste audit. Any questions? Once we are done with the data sheet after week 4, we submit it via email. That's right. So at week 4, you'll actually have, let me show you this. You will have two workbooks, one for landfill, one for recycling. Each week is a different tab. And at the end of that period, you will submit those to us, yes, via email. And that email is within this webinar, but it's also, we'll be emailing you about it in the Eventbrite. Yeah. Mira asks, do we have any tips for those living with multiple people? I know you shared some already, but if you have any more, I'd love to hear how others have handled this. You know, I think we've actually heard a lot of stories of this over the year. Every roommate or partner or family member is different, whether they want to play along with you and do the home waste audit, or whether you're trying to do it within the household and they are less interested. So if you want to just do your own waste, you can keep your waste separated, or you can try to get everyone involved. And remember, on that data sheet, you do have to put the number of people whose waste is in there. Hannah, do you have feedback or thoughts, because you've been following those data sheets over the years?
Yeah, we had a couple of people who ended up starting late because they were still struggling to get their family members to remember to note things down. So we've definitely had others have difficulty with that. I would say if you have a chat with whoever you're living with in your household, see if they want to be involved. If they don't, then you don't even necessarily need a second bin, like a separate bin for your waste. You could just have your tally as you throw things away and just mark it as you go. So it's all still going into the same bin and you don't have to think about separating it out, but you're just noting your own waste. But yeah, we will know if it's just if you've chosen to do it alone. If you just write one household member, then we will just treat you as your own mini household within your bigger household.
Yeah, I mean, my husband, for example, wanted nothing to do with logging his waste every time he threw it away, but he was more than happy to try to reduce, which is why I dumped my trash every week and counted it. So yeah. Any other questions on anything about the issue or anything about the home waste audit?
Oh, I have one more thing to note, which we might have actually already touched on, but and I think it says it on the data sheets. If you have any pets also produce waste, so we count them as half a person. Not saying they count any less, but they don't produce quite as much waste as us. So you can count them as 0.5 on your data sheets.
Mm-hmm. And actually, there is a sort of a question in the chat that came actually, Hannah, during your talk where you were talking about Roland Geyer's paper where 9% of plastic is recycled and I think 11% is incinerated. Mm-hmm. And the comment comes from Parm and it says, if I remember in other news articles, Japan and a few countries burn their plastics for heat or something. And that's true. Some countries that incineration can either be sometimes a clean burn under tight regulations used for energy. Or sometimes heating. In other cases, it can be incinerating without a clean burn, allowing that toxic chemical to go into the air. I don't know, Hannah, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I think you covered it. But yeah, I don't think it's as common in Canada, which is great.
I think we burn our hospital waste in Toronto.
Yeah.
Incinerate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then some more questions. Yes, we'll be getting emails for the surveys each week. Do we have linked references, resources where we can read up on local and national recycling rates? We can share resources for national recycling rates. If they're published for Ontario, we could try to find them. I'm sure they are. Yeah, we can try to dig that up. Maybe Rafaela make note of that and we can try to find that. I think I have the federal somewhere. I think the federal rate is 11%. Is that right? Or is it also 9? Somewhere between 9 and 11. It's no better than the global. But we can try to share some of there's the federal government had a science assessment published, I think in October of 2020 that we can share. Is a pickle jar a mixed object? I'm struggling to think of pure glass objects since everything's, oh, the label. I was thinking you were thinking of the lid. Hannah, do you want to comment on this? I think there's a note on the data sheet about how to deal with things with lids.
There is. I think we decided, I'm just double checking. I think we are asking you to count lids separately. So if you have a metal lid and a glass jar, it would count as metal and glass, and they go in whichever bin you put them in. But I'm going to double check that while I'm saying that. And then oh, and the label.
The label.
That's actually really interesting, you know, because no one, I've never seen, well, don't know about never, but very rarely has anyone recorded the label separately from the item.
But they do record fruit stickers. They're like produce stickers, which is kind of the same.
Yeah, it is. So that's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you're required to separate it, then do, and you can count them separately. It's not, it will counting them separately won't necessarily affect your how you manage to change your waste habits over the 4 weeks, because say you're using less jars, then you'll go down still. So follow your local recycling guidelines and separate them as required, and then count them as required would be my advice for that. That's a very good question.
Parm has a question in there about whether glass items go to landfill, and we can't answer questions right now about where things go because that is part of survey 1. And for this week, we want you to throw away as you normally would. So wherever you would normally put that item. And it often varies by city what the answer is. Quentin has a question, Hannah, I'm going to throw over to you, which is, can anyone still join the audit after today? So how long into the future can people begin their audit? Like 1 week? What did we say?
Yeah, I think up to 1 week. So if you don't want to start tomorrow, if you're not ready to start tomorrow, I think we've given ourselves a week to have all the data, make sure we've got all the data in and for us to sort through it. So yeah, I'd say up till next Monday would be the cutoff, and make sure that as soon as you, if you are starting late, as soon as you finish your week 4 data collection, then please send that to us as soon as possible afterwards, so we can make sure you're included for the second webinar.
And Susan just put an email in the chat to email us so that we know that you've got someone signing up. And Parm says, will electronics be counted as mixed? Electronics generally are mixed. And that's all I'll say about that, because then the rest is about your city's rules on electronics. Inga said, if the label is paper, don't they have a process to wash it off? Yeah, I don't think most municipalities suggest we take labels off of jars and things that we recycle. So I think the answer is yes. Yeah. Where can you recycle batteries? I don't know. We'll tell you in 4 weeks. But you can, but that is online, that information. Okay, Parm was answering that question. And
oh, do you mean, so Quentin, did you mean if you start the waste audit tomorrow and then other people in your household join later on? Was that the question, rather than can you all
Sorry,
start?
no, it was more like if anyone in now among my friends or decide to start and maybe to enroll later. That was more like my question.
Mm-hmm.
from a different house?
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah, they can. So the same answer applies. They can start late as long as they make sure they send us in their data as soon as they're finished. And probably would say, because the webinar's a couple of weeks after the end of everyone else doing week 4, I would say probably no later than a week behind everyone else.
And this is Susan. I'll just add in case it got missed in the chat. With the email, just make sure you email to us, because you won't be able to sign up through the Eventbrite page, but we can register you in the back end, and then you'll get all of the same updates as everyone else.
Yeah. I love this sharing of information. This is exactly the kind of stuff that we hope that you'll dig into throughout the 4 weeks.
Me too. It's a little early, but it's great. As long as we don't tell you, it's all good. So. All right. Any other questions or thoughts or things we want to mention before we send you off on your way to begin your 4 weeks of fun? When do we submit the surveys again? So Rafaela will send, Rafaela, do you want to answer this question actually?
So they answered one survey at the beginning, and then 1 week later they will answer the second survey, and then the third one will be in a month, and then the fourth will be in April. But don't worry, we will send you a reminder with the link through the Eventbrite page. And just let you know, the surveys are very short, so
Yeah.
don't worry.
Yeah, and an email with this recording will come soon with the links that Rafaela mentioned. So, yeah. Any other questions before we wrap up? We have time, so if you have them, feel free to ask them. Okay. All right. So I think we will go ahead and wrap up. We want to thank you so much for attending our first webinar and for registering to participate in the Home Waste Audit. It truly is one of our favorite events of the year. We hope you continue throughout the entire 4-week period. So hopefully you're in it to win it, and we can learn all about your data, and you can also learn about decreasing your own waste. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to send us an email or message us anytime on social media. If you want to share your own home waste audit stories, we'd love to hear from you. Please do so